can't describe just how much I miss you whenever you're gone. I want you here beside me for eternity, shining your light like a sun. I try for you, baby, to take the higher road, to be someone you're proud of, but I've been lost lately. I don't know what is right or wrong. Ooh, I always like me better when I'm around you. Ain't no place I'd rather be. You got this energy that always surrounds you. It's everything I'll ever need. The devil on my shoulder's almost gone. Ooh, I always like me better when I'm around you. Around you, oh yeah. Call me some night when you got time. I won't be asleep anyway. 'Cause I just need one reason to keep on breathing. Tell me you'll come back to stay. I try for you, baby, to take the higher road, to be someone you're proud of, but I've been lost lately. I don't know what is right or wrong. Ooh, I always like me better when I'm around you. Ain't no place I'd rather be. You got this energy that always surrounds you. It's everything I'll ever need. The devil on my shoulder's almost gone. Ooh, I always like me better when I'm around you. Around you, oh yeah. Lord knows how I try to be anything better than worst, but I can't get by. 'Cause I need you right now. I need you right now. Ooh, I always like me better when I'm around you. Ain't no place I'd rather be.
Good morning, everyone. We'll wait another couple of minutes for people to settle down. And then we'll start. Everybody's silent. James is closing the door. So we might as well start now. What do you think? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Open Policy Meeting, APNIC 57. I'm Bertrand Chérier from New Caledonia, and I'll be chairing this session with my co-chair, Shaila and Anupam. We still have people coming in, but we'll start now. So I will remind you that we will be using Confer for the consensus gauge. So make sure you can actually log in. And in case you didn't maintain the logging during the presentation, you might have to relog before actually using it because of a session timeout. I will now hand over the mic to Shaila for SIG administration. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of OPM of APNIC Open Policy Meeting at Apricot 2024. This is a reminder for how we administrate the policy SIG. We have Burton with us as policy SIG chair and me, Shaila, and Anupam as co-chairs. Next. Okay. Okay, policy SIG charter. The policy SIG charter is to develop the policies which is related to the resource allocation, recovery and transfer, resource registration, reverse DNS, RPK, and all other related services. These are two of the previous proposal. Prop 152 reduce the IPv4 delegation from /23 to /24. The version 1 was presented at APNIC 56, which didn't reach to the consensus, and the authors are not interested to continue the discussion. The policy chairs reached to the authors, but there was no response, and the status is abandoned. Another proposal, Prop 153, that was proposed changes to PDP, and the version 2 was presented in APNIC 56, which didn't reach to the consensus, and author is not interested to discuss further. The status is withdrawn. This is the agenda for Open Policy Meeting 1. Burton already have gone through the welcome remarks, and I'm going through SIG administration. And after that, Geoff will present what happened with addresses in 2023. And we have received 4 proposals this time, and we will discuss 2 proposals in the first session, OPM 1. And the proposal is Prop 156, which will be presented by Christopher Hawker, and Prop 158 will be presented by David Yoga Pratanma. This is the agenda for OPM 2, and it will held after the lunch break. We also have organized a policy proposal webinar on 15th February 2024. It was actually a good opportunity for the authors to share their proposal, to read out their proposal with the community and get the feedback and comments. And 23 members from the community joined the webinar, including the secretariat staff. For the newcomers, if you're interested for policy SIG, you actually have to subscribe to the mailing list. And these are the steps for implementing a policy. First, first you need to submit a policy, and the policy is published into the mailing list for the further community discussion. And then if it reaches consensus at policy SIG, then it has to reach again consensus at members meeting. And afterwards, there is a certain comment period which will lead us to the EC endorsement. And afterward, there is another period for editorial comment. And after finishing that period, it will go to the APNIC Secretariat for implementation. And it will take maybe like a long time or a short time, depending on the policy. Consensus decision making. The consensus is a general agreement which is taking into consideration comments on the mailing list and OPM. So it's not a voting process. If you are going to object, like you actually have 2 options. Either you oppose it, which is minor objection, or you strongly oppose it, which is major objection. If you strongly oppose it, we will ask you to explain that why you do not want this proposal to go on. So we also have like other options like neutral, support, and strongly support. And participants should work together to resolve the objections. And there is a link for code of conduct. You can go through it from the website. And for gauging consensus, the chair will consider the mailing list discussion, the discussion on OPM, AGM, and confer. So this is the tool we use for gauging consensus. For gauging consensus, the tool name is Confer. All registered conference attendees can access without creating a separate Confer account. So if you already have logged in to join the OPM, you can simply click on the below link, confer.epnic.net, and you can participate. And also it's a reminder that like RIR, ICANN, and PTI secretary staff do not participate the consensus call. These are some of the very useful references. You can go through it. EPNIC policy development process, SIG guidelines and mailing list subscription and archives. You can go through it. And that's it. Over to you, Barton. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaila. Yeah, Tony, please.
Thanks, Bertrand. Tony Smith from APNIC. Just before we start, I wanted just to pass on an update from the APNIC Executive Council. There's been some discussion about Prop 155, which was passed and endorsed by the APNIC EC in November, which allowed, and as part of that announcement, the EC determined that a /48 IPv6 PI assignment would have its fees waived for 12 months. And then after 12 months, the resources would become chargeable. The EC listens carefully to feedback from the community, and it received feedback on that decision and discussed this further, and have changed that decision in line with the community feedback, and that have determined that the 12-month restriction will be dropped, and that a /48 IPv6 PI assignment will be classed as a non-chargeable resource. Just wanted to pass that on. Thank you very much to the community for the feedback. And if you have any, Kenny will talk about this tomorrow during the APNIC AGM. But if there's any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. It's good news. Geoff, please.
Morning all, Geoff Houston, APNIC. Look, one of my jobs as chief scientist at APNIC is to actually look at the effect of address policies on the internet. In other words, what's the feedback loop? You make policies, but the issue is what happened afterwards. So can someone please bring the slides up? Good, try harder. In fact, try faster, sorry. That would help, because this is, your feedback report card about not any particular policy, but just what does the landscape of addresses look like on the internet. You can see it. Oh, good. Well, let's all crowd round that screen just over there to my left. I can tell that. I will be quick if I can ever get slides. If I can't get slides, this will be long and painful. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll bring up my laptop. We'll all do it. It's all online, by the way. If you all stare at your laptops, I can just do the commentary on what you're staring at. We do the Q&A now, and then I'll go back to the presentation afterwards. Yay. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is actually a roundup of the last 12 months using RIR published data, which we'll explore. I've just pressed the next slide button. You can do it manually. Next. I said, thank you. No, back one. You bounced. Oh, the clicker works. Now, you say that, you are wrong. Hey, finally. Okay, address allocations. Now, this is a long view. The left-hand side is 2012 or 2011, 2012, just around the time IANA was running out. And that huge column with that massive amount of green are allocations of addresses by Aaron, equally with APNIC in blue. We'd run out by 2012. Aaron was in the run out stage, RIPE was, and you notice across the 2010s, it just ran down. So last year, 2023, 1.5 million addresses went out the collective RIR's door. It's down to close to nothing. But interestingly, the allocation activity is still really quite high. Back in 2012, there were around 9,000 allocation actions. Last year, even with only 1.5 million addresses, 3,462 allocation actions. Why? We're handing out tiny scraps of addresses. It really is, you know, slicing and dicing to the 24 across most of them. The activity, APNIC is still actually quite big, and we'll see why in a second, because there are some differences in the RIRs that sort of matter. I find columnar stack graphs kind of weird, so I've redone the same data as a bunch of lines. And what you actually find is the most addresses actually came out of APNIC. Around 1 million addresses got allocated from the APNIC pool, lesser in the other 4 RIRs, the least from LACNIC. And the number of allocation transactions, of those 3,200, 2,000 were actually APNIC actions. So APNIC is still, if you will, of those tiny scraps of 24s, dealing with the most addresses. Transfers. Now, like I said, 1.5 million came out of the registries. From the RIR's own transfer data, 25.3 million addresses were transferred. There are 5 RIRs, and each of them record transfers in their own special and very unique way. And I have no idea in that column why RIPE totally dominates. You know, as if they take blocks of addresses and sort of, well, that was 1 million addresses. Let me put in 1 million things into the transfer log. It's bizarre. There is something happening in RIPE that I'm not really grokking. And the other one I don't really grok is Aaron, the green, because you see on the left, there's a reasonable amount of transfer activity in Aaron each year, but the number of transactions is sort of itsy, tiny, invisible. There are 300 million Americans. There's a lot of companies. There should be a lot of address movement. They don't all deal in, you know, /12s, do they? So I actually don't understand this graph, but I will say faithfully, I scraped the data, I lifted the JSON, this is what the JSON says. Underneath it all, like I said, 5 different RIRs, 5 different policies, 5 different ways of actually recording this data, and you sit there and go, none of that makes any sense to me. The only thing I can say is the transfer activity is about 20 times greater than the RIR allocation activity. This should not be surprising to anyone. Who's selling and who's buying? I looked at movement across borders, and this is not where the addresses get deployed, it's the country of domicile, the address, or at least the country that you say, I live in blah and I'm an account holder. Interestingly, the US had a net sort of movement of around 4 to 5 million addresses to the UK. Now, is that a transfer or someone kind of moving across from Aaron to RIPE? I have no idea. But, you know, I haven't traced individual addresses, but that's the largest movement in 2023 that I saw in the logs. You can shake your head over there. I don't know what's going on either. It's just bizarre. You do? Good. Explanations in the Q&A. of the other countries, oddly enough, desperation isn't high internationally. There's not millions of addresses moving amongst the others. It's the hundreds of thousands. There's a lot around Europe as Europe seemed to be realigning. You'll notice there are some real absences here, like China, where there are very, very large sort of enterprises and they're massive, but they're not actually moving much in addresses. India actually got rid of 355,000. Maybe their V6 programs in Bharti Airtel really are working and the excess is being sold. I don't know, but you know, that's the who's selling, who's buying. And the other one, of course, which is I think the most fascinating, because in any market, and the transfer market is a market, prices reflect the equilibration of demand and supply. When a good is scarce, the price rises, more people want it than I can satisfy. When a good is in abundance, you get down to the net intrinsic value of the good. And certainly at this point, the equilibration is back to where we were in 2021. Equally, interestingly, up to 2021, the market information, this is Hilco Streambank, thank you, IPv4.global, thank you indeed. No one else publishes, bastards. Did I say that with my mouth open? I did. You notice the tight grouping. Up until 2021, buyers and sellers knew the market. They knew the price. No one was bidding, you know, extraordinarily high or selling low. They knew the market. Somehow across COVID, they talked themselves into scarcity. But see the spread? It's from sort of 60 down to $40 at one point. They're not talking. They're not looking. They're just panic buying or panic selling. So that spread got really high. And even the end of 2023, the spread is still between 29 up to 42 on the transactions logged. And it's kind of, you need to talk to each other. The whole idea about publishing pricing is the market doesn't distort. So one would hope that if nothing else, the variance comes down as the buyers and sellers actually exchange more information. Because if you're buying blind and selling blind, you're a victim. You know, it's your fault. So that variance is a big thing. Coming down is a different kind of question. Why is the world no longer massively addicted to sort of getting the last bit out of V4? Because it's not. Demand has come down. I dare to say saturation, and it could be true. I don't know. One of the other theories about transfers was that we would get that large pool of addresses, 50/8s, which we can't see in the routing table, and actually flush them out. And I'm pretty sure that if some crazed person offered $1 million per /32, it might cost a lot, but we'd flush them all out. The lot, it'd all come out. At sort of $30, no, it's just not happening. There was a little bit of movement when the US Department of Defense actually advertised its /8s, and that's the blip there. But on the whole, the transfer market from sort of 2012 onwards, it hasn't really dented that pool of unadvertised addresses. It's much the same size. The folk who have addresses that aren't being advertised don't feel any particular momentum or inclination to sell them. And instead, the movement is all happening around the advertised address pool. So there's no net movement of those 50/8s. No net movement. So anyone who thinks that /4 in Class E is going to do anything, look at that and think hard about what's going on here. Think very hard. It's not what you think. So unadvertised address pool rose by a /8 across the year. Rose. So /8 actually went into it's no longer being advertised. And you see the advertised pool came down. The RIRs in total, in and out, returns and so on, the net change was 400,000 addresses. The available pools, because when addresses are in the RIRs rather than somewhere else, they're in one of two states. It's available. Anyone, you know, the next person in line will get some addresses. APNIC has a pool of available addresses at around 2.5 million /32s. Afrinic, around 1.1 million. Afrinic's draw rate is almost robotic. With APNIC, there have been movements, and we'll see on the next slide what's going on, that have lifted that available pool. The other RIRs run their available pools at zero, just at zero. Why? Because reserved pools, the other state. So in APNIC, occasionally we cleanse that reserve pool and move them into available, because normally when an address comes back, an address block, it is in what we'd say quarantine to make sure, you know, no one's still using it or whatever for some period of months to years. And there seems to be these periodic cleanups that go from reserved and then we draw down again and move it into available. LACNIC, around 800,000 addresses are in that reserve pool. ARAN, there's all the addresses. Around 5.2, 5.3 million addresses are marked not as available, but as reserved, which is kind of, if you put available and reserved together, you'd find there's a lot more of an equality of, you know, each RIR has somewhere between 2 and 5 million addresses. It's just that ARAN, AFRINIC, and the RIPE NCC is the one that has nothing, just nothing, no reserve, no available, you know, the bank's empty. So V4, I think there's saturation. I think we're maturing. I don't think the internet rush is on anymore. The V6 progress is finally doing what everyone promised, that and happy eyeballs. If you deploy V6, the pressure on V4 is relieved because users would prefer to use 6 over 4. And I think finally, after 30 years, that's actually a factor here. Lower market prices tend to press that out, and there's lower pressure to release unadvertised addresses. V6, well, you know, ARAN did something in October and someone got a /16. Speak to them, I have no idea, but it was an awfully big allocation. The actual volume of allocations in V6 has come down. This is all RIRs, it's not transfers. And you'll notice that kind of peak frenetic activity in 6 has calmed down a lot. We're down to the levels of 2013 and so on. So V6 is more steady as she goes. There is not much difference between the RIRs, and if you think about it, the population and the GDP and the level of economic activity. That is kind of business as usual. Same graph. APNIC is APNIC actually did do more transactions, but far fewer addresses. And ARAN managed to top the scale for 2023 with that /16 in V6, which is an awful lot of addresses. I hope they use it wisely. The advertised pool is rising. There's not much care factor about V6. There's so many addresses. So oddly enough, we've handed out a whole lot more than we see. And right now, if I count them as in fact, thousands of /32s, there's 150,000 /32s in the advertised space, but the RIRs on their books have approximately double that as being out there. So there's no great pressure when I get a V6 block to advertise the lot. In fact, quite the opposite. And so the total pool is now up to 450,000 /32s. I don't know about you, but trying to find the right unit in V6, you can't speak about /128s because I'd be here all day going through numbers. Even /32s is kind of, well, that's too big. So I'm using thousands of /32s. If you can think of a better metric, I'll use it. Unadvertised to advertised, as I've said, V6, no one really cares. So at the moment, around 60 to 65% of the addresses that are out there, I can't see in the routing table, but none of you seem to care about that, so I don't care about it either. Scarcity and V6 cannot be used in the same sentence. It just doesn't work. IPv6 deployment, you know, there's no mad rush. You can actually say when India deployed in 2017 and when China sort of gets moving, those are the big populations that move the graph. But they're not sudden, there's no panic. Right now, across the last couple of years, it's just been what I would say a gentle redeployment and renewing of equipment and service. There's no great pace and no great frenetic activity. Where do we see V6? Well, obviously India. Interestingly, some of these developed economies, some of the providers do, some of them don't. The guys that don't, the guys and girls that don't feel any particular pressure. They don't, otherwise they'd do something. And so across the world, Africa, notably not. That area of that's Eastern Europe and sort of Russia and around the Middle East, with the exception of the Saudis, no great pressure. None at all, really, all red. South America, Brazil, Uruguay, and everyone else. So it's kind of a mixed picture. But the good news, the really good news, is that we're beating New Zealand. Yay. So I'd say this is just steady. There's no great, oh my God, I got to do V6 tomorrow. It's just not there. Those large address allocations mean there's no great pressure on efficiency. You don't need to throw it in the routing table. You know, it's just basically a relatively steady job without a huge amount of eye on efficiency or on conservation. The consumption rates are tapering off. I actually think most of the internet market is saturating like crazy. Those folk who have IP have it, and the rest is just how cheap can you go to soak up the rest? And that's kind of an Africa question more than anything else. So I would say V6 is kind of not a problem. If there are any questions on that, we will try, or I will try and answer them, or fumble with lies and half-truths.
Before making a comment or question, please remember to state your name and affiliation. Thank you.
Touch the mic here. Wait, do we have it? Oh, good, thank you. Lee Howard from IPv4.global by Hilco Stream Bank. It's really interesting that you and I are parsing the same JSON files or the various RIR transfer logs and getting different numbers. And that's just, wow, data are weird.
I bet you're not using Perl.
No, I mean,
Yeah, that's the
I'm using
reason.
Python, right? Exactly. Totally different libraries.
Python, I find
Math is completely different between languages. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, when you're mentioning price changes, and I don't want to be commercial, but you said that it looks to you like demand is down. I actually think supply is up, and that pushes prices down, and demand is flat, because it looks to me, when I parse the same logs, somehow I'm seeing 40 million addresses per year changing hands. And it's been pretty close to 40 million for the past 5 years. So very stable demand, but it looks to me like there's more supply, and that's bringing prices down.
This is a data matching problem, because in an inter-RIR transfer, you see it twice. The outgoing registry says it went, and the incoming says yes, but they don't say the same thing.
So there's a data normalization project that'd be really interesting to go between the RIRs. We should probably work on that. And on the when you're talking about seeing more or seeing the numbers /8s in the routing tables, you're actually looking at actual Class A's from the original,
These were DoD allocations in the low numbers. Yes.
Yeah. So probably not going to change based on market activity, right?
Oh, no.
Sorry, couldn't help you with the U.S. government. That was more than we could get.
They're a mystery to all of us. Thank you.
Hello, John Sweeting with Aaron.
Ah, the man. Hi, John.
So to answer your question on the out of Aaron into RIPE into the UK, one very large, huge multinational company that got all their space from Aaron, but they're using a lot of it in RIPE, and they've just decided to balance that out and put the addresses in the region that they're actually using. That it's one company.
I have this theory, and I think I'm the only person in the entire planet that still has this theory, that the RIRs are meant to be shop fronts. And it doesn't matter where you use the addresses, you just need a local RIR who speaks your language and works in your time zone. But I freely admit this is a unique view of mine based on something that happened 30 years ago. And now folks seem to say, if I'm using it in a region, I need to use the RIR in that region. So be it. That's what people do. So thanks for the explanation.
And it doesn't appear to be for any particular reason, because their fees aren't going down in Aaron, and they're not going down or up in RIPE. So it's not for any of that, other than all we can tell is they just want to have it in the region that they're actually using it in. Maybe geolocation. I have no idea.
Who am I to argue with someone who's moving 4 million addresses? Yeah. Are you moving 4 million addresses?
That was not my company that did that. However, I will say we use space. Oh, I'm sorry, Tina Morris, AWS. I will say sometimes we do put space specifically in a reason for data sovereignty and geolocation. Some companies absolutely require, they are under the impression for whatever reason, that if an IP is assigned in the Erin region, that the IP traffic is now leaving Europe, coming back to America, and then going there. I wish there were more sources. But I
Healthy markets rely on
Yeah.
open pricing data. Let me just say that.
100%, and yes, I agree. But I will say that sometimes people reflect on this and go, I want the top of the market, and they don't realize what that is. So they are getting their information from the source and then applying it incorrectly. There are 3 tiers of market.
Oh,
like
I agree, but
researching.
I'd expect more definitive banding for that to happen, but it's kind of weird. But as you say, it is just one person who is brave enough, one company, to actually publish pricing, and for that I thank them.
Yeah, so Lee Howard from IPv4.global again. I will also point out that the published data is what happens on the marketplace that's online. So there are private transactions that are more often those 16s and larger blocks that don't appear because we have partners that don't want to be on the marketplace.
Sure.
So there is missing data here, and I'm not allowed to share it, and I wish I could. An interesting artifact here is way back in the early days, before prices were published, you saw this spread of prices, right? They were sort of all over the place. And as prices were published, then you got that clustering that you were pointing out, and then it spread out again. I don't know why it spread out again. The stratification is happening somewhat, where larger blocks sell for more than smaller blocks, because you can always break them up into smaller blocks if the prices are weird. But
Don't forget, this is price per /32. So, I've normalized it to that extent, but you're right, there is a spread.
and I just didn't want to over push on this
Yeah.
particular item. I do think that this is also only one company's perspective, and it would be great if there were more published numbers.
Agreed. John?
Okay, yeah, John Sweeting still with Aaron, I hope. For the transfer numbers you had, I don't know how you're querying the transfer logs, but the only difference that I think could talk to that is that Aaron transfers when we do transfers, they come back into Aaron, and they get a new date when Aaron then allocates them out to the recipient. I don't think any of the other RIRs does it that way.
No, so for which I thank you very, very much. You make my life, a misery while I'm working through these numbers. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I can testify that more than 3.4 million addresses were purchased and transferred last year. in the US.
What can I say?
Sorry, I know we have a lot of policy to discuss. So, because you pointed out, it looked like about 3.4 million addresses were transferred in the Aaron region, but that looks like 8 million were transferred from the
Less.
source. And so, right, so when you were reporting on how many transfers happened, was that source or destination region?
There's a bunch that went into Italy.
Yeah.
Right. So this isn't pairing. This is just on the transfers across national borders. The US was on the source side for 7.9 million addresses that went somewhere. The UK sort of was on the 2.8 went out.
I was thinking about your stack chart, which showed smaller numbers, and was that based on source or based on destination region?
God. Oh, God.
Because
This is my data matching problem, right? This is my data matching. This is the RIR that is the source
that'd be
RIR.
source, yeah.
Okay. I think. Yeah, it's data. It's really weird. Have we exhausted questions? We've decided that Jeff has no clue what he's doing. Cool. There you go. All right.
So no more question or comment for Jeff?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
We will be dealing now with Prop 156. But before that, we might check Confer. So for those of you who are willing to use Confer, we'll be not ready yet. 2 minutes. So we've got 2 minutes to spare. And I don't have a joke to tell, so sorry. Yeah, Chris, please. Okay, yeah. So we can continue now with Prop 156, assignment of temporary IP resources by Christopher Hooker.
Hello. Okay. Hi, guys. Christopher Hawker here. My policy proposal 156 is for the assignment of temporary IPv4, assignment of temporary IP resources. At the moment, APNIC does not currently have any policies or mechanisms in place which allow for the temporary assignment of IP resources, apart from experimental space, which is in 5.7 of APNIC 127 Internet Number Resource Policies. This means that for those that do require temporary space, or space for temporary purposes, I should say, they may need to, or they need to use existing assignments, which may or may not be in line with, which may or may not be in line with justification provided when the resources were initially delegated. The objective of the policy change is to allow for the reservation of a /21 v4 prefix, as well as a /29 and 8 AS numbers from the current available pools, and for temporary assignments to be made from this reserved space for purposes such as conferences, workshops, SIG meetings, or other purposes where a long-term assignment would not be feasible and the APNIC deems appropriate. Now, situation in other regions. RIPE NCC's policy, RIPE 801, allows for space to be assigned on a temporary basis, such as for academic research, conferences, and other purposes, as the RIPE NCC deems appropriate for a specified timeframe. AFRENIC, under Section 9 of their Consolidated Policy Manual, they allow for assignments to be made for pretty much the same purposes. And AREN and LACNIC do not have a policy which either allow or prohibit temporary assignments to be made. Now, the proposed policy solution. Across the Asia Pacific region, there are a large number of conferences that do take place, such as APRICOT and the APNIC conferences, that take place for the benefit of the wider internet community. There may also be requirements where a temporary assignment may be necessary, where a long-term assignment exceeding 6 months may not be feasible. This section, the scope and goal of the policy proposal is to allow for the temporary assignment of IPv4 and IPv6 space, as well as highest numbers for short-term periods not exceeding 6 months. The goal of the policy is to provide a way for organisations to be able to obtain this temporary space. So if they put their hand up in the community and say, look, we need temporary space because we want to run a workshop, we want to have want to hold a meeting or a conference, then this gives them the opportunity or the ability to be able to do that. Assignments for temporary purposes. APNIC will reserve a /21 IPv4 prefix, as well as a /29 IPv6 prefix and 8 AS numbers to allow for assignments to be made under this policy. APNIC will then assign IP resources to an organisation or body for temporary purposes from this reserved pool. These purposes may include a conference, workshop, special interest group meetings, and other purposes as APNIC deems appropriate, where a long-term assignment may not be feasible. An assignment may be made if it is for one of the stated reasons below, or otherwise deemed to be a suitable purpose by APNIC. A temporary assignment can be made if one of the criteria set out in 5821 to 5823 is met, or if APNIC makes a determination under 5824 in favour of the applicant. As resources are assigned under this policy are exempt from the standard quarantine practices, the member accepts that the resources assigned under this policy may not be fully routable in the event that the routes do still exist in a global routing table. There we go. And so what I've also done is I've gone through and listed out the 4 reasons or the 4 potential purposes where a temporary assignment may be required. So we have conferences that are held for the purpose of policy development, education, sharing of information and research, as well as professional networking. The applicant must provide a draft program no later than 6 weeks from the commencement of the conference, as well as justification for the assignment. So why they need to use the temporary assignment for that purpose. Workshops which are held to discuss certain topics or key issues within the internet community. Under this criterion, the applicant must demonstrate why a temporary assignment is required by providing information on how the temporary assignment will assist in this discussion, such as technical demonstrations of certain issues being discussed. Special interest group meetings. SIG meetings that are held to discuss certain areas of interest within the internet community. If applying for a temporary assignment for a SIG meeting, the applicant must demonstrate why an assignment is needed by providing an agenda and explaining how the assignment will assist them in a technical capacity with the meeting's agenda. And 5824, other special purposes. If the applicant is applying for a temporary assignment with justification that does not fall under one of the above purposes, they may make what's called a special purpose application to APNIC for such an assignment. APNIC will then review, or the Secretariat will then review all material presented in support of the application, and then make a determination as to what size assignments are required and the timeframe for which they are to be assigned. Now, for temporary assignments for assignment sizes, in most cases, no greater than a /24 IPv4 prefix, a /32 v6, and a single AS number will be provided unless the applicant can demonstrate a need for larger assignments. When an assignment is made under this policy, the applicant must create APNIC for the assignment. APNIC in its sole discretion, based on justification provided and taking into consideration the amount of time required to establish infrastructure for the event, will make a determination as to the time period for which an assignment will be made. If the applicant deems that this time period is not to be sufficient, they can make a request back to the Secretariat to extend the assignment time period with justification as to why they need the assignment for a longer period. Any 584 registration, any assignments made under this policy proposal will be registered in the APNIC Whois database. The details pertaining to the assignment will also be made available. Now, 585 restrictions. The applicant must not use the assignment for any purpose which is commercial in nature. If a determination is made that it is being used for a commercial purpose, then APNIC will have grounds to recover or reclaim the assignment. Just to give people an idea, an example as to what a commercial purpose or commercial in nature is. It's using the resources for a service which is designed to be sold for financial gain. So i.e. a virtual machine provider obtaining resources and then using the IPs to sell those VMs. A for-profit entity charging a fee to attend a conference where the intent of the conference is to promote or advertise proprietary services and systems that aren't open source. A private education provider requiring students to pay tuition fees which result in a financial benefit for the provider. Now, just to provide some examples as to what is not a commercial purpose and what is not commercial in nature. Training programs held by a not-for-profit organisation whose purpose is to educate participants on networking systems and protocols. Conferences held by network operator groups such as OSNOG, and NANOG, SANOG, and the like, where the overall purpose of the event is not-for-profit in nature, so they don't derive a profit from it. And special interest group meetings, which hold meetings and technical workshops to discuss functions, systems, and protocols that are designed to benefit the community as a whole. Now, 586, fees for temporary assignments. Temporary assignments can only be made to APNIC account holders. If an applicant is not an APNIC member, they are permitted to nominate a member who can act on their behalf for the technical requirements related to the temporary assignment. Otherwise, they are able to become a member themselves by becoming an associate member in line with existing policies. Assignments made under this policy proposal do not count towards a member's membership tier. But 587, return of resources. Resources must be returned to APNIC before the end date of the temporary assignment. Once returned, they are exempt from the normal quarantine process for returned resources and are immediately available for further assignments. Unavailability of IP resources. If a member submits a request for resources, however, APNIC is not able to fill the request it is not possible to fulfill the request due to the unavailability of resources for the requested period, the Secretariat may decline the request. Now, just some advantages and disadvantages of this proposal. The proposal will provide, the advantage that I've identified is that it will provide an avenue for members to be temporarily assigned resources should they not have the means or the capacity to obtain resources through other channels. And as far as I've been able to identify, there are no known disadvantages other than the reduction of the current available pool by /21 to allow for IP assignments under this proposal. Now, the impacts of this policy, again, will be negligible, where resources are announced and withdrawn due to the addition of routes from the global routing table. But having said this, routes are withdrawn and added very, very frequently, so it will be negligible. references. I referred to Afrinic's policy for temporary resource allocation, as well as RIPE NCC's RIPE 801 document. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Do you have any questions or comment for Chris? Remember to state your name and affiliation. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Yuto from Homelock in Japan. It's a just comment. I agree. I volunteers of Janog NOC team. Janog is the biggest network event in Japan. When we build a big event network in Japan, we need to provide the IP address assignment from the company. Therefore, we need to get help by company, or I don't think that's bad. But searching feels difficult and costly. So there is only one option. Therefore, I think it would be nice to have a segment for the event network increase options. I think we need, I think we need to think about bad thing, or it's hard to judge or look like people who will do bad things. I think we need to discuss that. This is a just comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yoshinobu Matsuzaki from the technical committee of the Apricot. So we actually operating the conference network here by using the Apricot prefix. To adjust the geo IP information, we needed to announce our prefix from Thailand since last December.
Yes.
So it takes time to adjust such a geo IP information, and otherwise we will face some strange issues. And we had such an issue before. We started to announce the conference network prefix from way before the event. So maybe we need some operational best practices once we adopt this policy. So just in case, I'm neutral for this proposal. Thank you very much.
Of course. And that's why when I was looking at the time frame for assignments to be made, that's why I allowed for a 6-month window, which will effectively give network operators the ability to commence announcements much earlier from the start of their conference or workshop to be able to meet those requirements for geolocation.
No more question or comments? Okay. So I will now make a consensus call. And before that, make sure you log in into Confer at confer.apnic.net. So you will be given the opportunity to indicate whether you will strongly support, neutral, oppose, or strongly oppose this proposal. Sorry, nap time. And again, if you strongly oppose, you will have to stand and explain why. So if you strongly support this proposal, please raise your hand. If you support this proposal, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you are neutral about this proposal, please raise your hand. Thank you. If you oppose this proposal, please raise your hand. And if you strongly oppose this proposal, please raise your hand. Thank you. I will now discuss with my co-chairs. So this proposal did reach consensus. Thank you all. The next step is in the PDP to take this proposal to the AMM AGM tomorrow and seek continued consensus there. And then the proposal will be posted back to the mailing list for a 4-week comment period. If required, that period will be extended to up to 8 weeks. Thank you all, and thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
So our next proposal, Prop 158 IPv6 auto allocation for each IPv4 request. It will be presented online. David Aditya Yoga Prathanma, he will present it. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Hope you can hear my voice. Okay, thank you very much for the policy chairs that they given me the opportunity to propose about IPv6 auto allocation for each IPv4 request. So, the problem statement, based on the data that I collected from the IPNIC blocks, there are more than 2 million IPv4 IP addresses available, even though we know that the 103/8 pool is running out. So it means that IPNIC members still can get maximum of /22 IPv4 address based on the current policy. And interestingly, most of the new IPv4 requesters are not requesting IPv6, even though they are eligible to do so. And the rates of IPv4 allocation is faster than IPv6 allocation. Hence, it may keep the slow deployment rate of the IPv6. And I also noticed that IPNIC associate member can get IPv6 without additional cost. And it's listed in proposal 155. And so IPNIC members should be able to do the same when they request IPv4 address. This chart showing the data of IPv4 versus IPv6 delegation made by IPNIC and NIR in IPNIC region each year. We can see in every year, IPv6 request is not more than half of the IPv4 delegation. So the objective is allocate IPv6 address to each IPv4 address request to speed up the IPv6 adoption and deployment rates. What's happening in other regions? In IPNIC, there is no such policy. In ARIN, no such policy, and they have no available address space to be delegated. In RIPE NCC, it's the same with ARIN. And in LACNIC, there is a policy which says IPv6 allocation request is used as the requirement for any IPv4 request. And it mentioned in their policy number 2331, which says the applicant must already have at least one IPv6 blocks assigned with LACNIC, or if not, must simultaneously request an IPv6 block in accordance with the corresponding applicable policy. If an applicant has already been assigned an IPv6 block, they shall submit to LACNIC a brief document describing their progress in implementation of IPv6. And the proposed solution policy solution is the first is add a special point in FPV4 allocation policy. 2. Automatically allocate FPV6 address to its FPV4 address. And the second is for every new IPv4 request, the requester should plan the IPv6 deployment within 3 years. And for subsequent IPv4 requests, requester should give a progress of their IPv6 deployment as the part of the requirement. What I propose is adding this point to section 6.1 about minimum and maximum IPv4 delegations of the EPNIC policy document. The first point is for all new and initial IPv4 delegation requests, EPNIC will automatically delegate matching IPv6 policy, same as section 821. It means if a member get a /24 or assignment, they will get also /48. And if they have an allocation /23 of IPv4, they will eligible for /32 of IPv6. It means that it will not affect the annual fee of that member. That's to be noted. And the second point that I suppose to be added is automatically delegate IPv6 address space should be put into deployment within 2 years from the date of the delegation. Since the idea of the proposal is to make sure accelerate the IPv6 deployment. So every IPv6 delegated should be monitored by EPNIC or evaluated by EPNIC to meet the 2 years requirement from the delegation. And for any subsequent IPv4 request, EPNIC account holder should be able to demonstrate the deployment status of the automatically delegated IPv6 address space before. So it means, for example, if a member has a /24 IPv4 address, it means that they still have an opportunity if they're eligible to get more /24 blocks. And before that IP address is delegated, EPNIC have to ask for the status of the deployment that IPv6 that they received before. And EPNIC may also verify these details with the publicly available routing or BGP data or any other sources. So the advantage of the proposal is first is to maintain the consistency between IPv4 and IPv6 allocation, like I said in the first chart that I said before. The second is to speed up the adoption of IPv6 address. And the disadvantage that I see is the allocated IPv6 address may not deploy by ISPs on the members on time. And it will cause more IPv6 pool unadvertised in the internet. And the second disadvantage that I see is there will be a change on the resource allocation system at EPNIC. And the impact on EPNIC is, the first is, EPNIC have to change the allocation system to automatically allocate IPv6 without any option to select IPv4 or IPv6 or both. So IPv6 is automatically allocated on every IPv4 delegation request. And it may change the pricing scheme if it's not considering IPv6 address allocation. Like I said before, it will not change this pricing scheme if the member gets the IPv6 following their IPv4 request. For example, if they request for /24, if they get /48, there will be no price difference for the annual fee. And the third impact is there will be more effort to check the IPv6 deployment, or maybe need to develop specific system to monitor the IPv6 deployment. So in summary, first is IPv4 requests will keep growing in the next few years since we know IPNIC still have reserved IPv4 that is reclaimed, and we cannot speed up the IPv6 request or adoption. And this proposal proposed to add IPv6 address auto-allocation for its IPv4 request. There is also similar policy in LACNIC that put IPv6 allocation of request as part of the IPv4 allocation requirement. And this is the link that you can see. This is some reference that I see before I proposed with this policy. Okay, thank you very much. If you have any questions or comment, thank you.
Thank you, David. We've got a comment from Zoom. Nupam?
Yes, Bertrand. Yes, Bertrand, the comment is from Jordi. The comment is as follows. The only issue I see with this proposal is how the size of the IPv6 delegation is determined. It will be by default /32, and that is a question. Because in some cases, this is not right. It is too small for any provider that has more than 50,000 customers. I think the policy must ensure that a proper addressing plan is presented and the right allocation provided following that addressing plan. Thank you.
So we have few comments. Please mention your name and affiliation. Please from here.
I'm Oanh from VNIC. Yes, David, thank you so much for your proposal. And just I talk about the status in Vietnam, and also we have promote IPv6 for a long time, and also we promote our member holding IPv6. So if the proposal reach consensus in this meeting, and we look forward to support our member to have IPv6. So I very strong support the proposal. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. From here.
Hi, Tina Morris, AWS. While I support easing the path to V6, very much so, I do not support this policy. I don't believe forcing V6 to be routed in order to get additional V4 space will actually increase adoption. It's just a placebo, and it won't actually, it won't force them to run services. So I would support this policy if that portion was dropped, the automatic assignment of V6 to be specific, and all of that, because I don't think that's effective.
Thank you. Chris.
Chris Walker, speaking in my personal capacity. For the record, I will be strongly objecting to this policy proposal. For a number of reasons, but more importantly, if a member was to apply for a delegation under multi-homing, they can apply for a /24 prefix, which has a cost of $1,180 per year, Australian dollars. Under multi-homing, if they were to receive, or the smallest allocation they can receive is a /32, which has a fee of $2,025, requiring a member to pay an additional $845 a month, which in some economies could actually be constituted as illegal. An organisation can't force a person to purchase or to obtain an additional service and then require them to pay a much higher fee. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny.
Okay, Kenny Huang, APNIC T-Learning, speaking in my personal capacity for the record. And actually, this proposal has financial implication and also could be impact the fee structure. And if there was more data to analyze, to access what kind of financial implication it could be, and I think that would be more useful for the member to decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Yes, hello, Marco Schmidt, Manager Registration Service from the VIPE NCC. And in this capacity, I don't have any opinion about this proposal, but I would like to give some hopefully useful information, because it was stated that in the VIPE NCC there is no such policy, and that is correct. But we actually used to have this requirement until 2015, where there was an policy proposal to remove it with the argumentation that it would not help the IPv6 deployment and that it just added complexity for the WIPE NCC and for the members. And that was this proposal reached consensus in 2015. And since then, we don't have this requirement anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Panditji.
I think the rules, I'm Parhar speaking for myself. The rules say that someone has to project a need for a particular resource. Now, in this case, if this policy goes through as it is, the member has not asked for this resource, but it is being forced onto him. Number one. Number two, we say that after that he must announce it in 2 years. Now, suppose he does not announce it, then what? Then would be some coercive measures on him or what? So the policy still, I can look at it from the point of view that it is trying to do some incentivization, but probably the incentivization is not meeting the requirement yet. It is in a very, very rough form. So there are still a number of doubts on this.
Please.
Yeah, I'm Aris from SIT Singapore, but I'm originally from Indonesia. So, and then the IPv6 actually is my degree final project for more than 20 years ago. So in that time, I was very sure that the transition will be very smooth and straightforward because like 20 years ago, all the technology mechanism is already available in the time. But surprisingly, when I was discussing with a colleague from, especially from IDNIC from the Indonesia NIR, I mean, the adoption rate and also the number of the requests of IPv6 is still very low. Okay, so so I do believe that the IDNIC already has doing a very good job to like promote, educate, or even what they say, give some very good idea on how we deploy IPv6. But still, I think I mean especially for us in Indonesia, we still need something more than the like education, promotion, and so on. Yeah. So for me, overall, I'm what they say, supporting these proposals to be in the policy. But of course, I do agree that some what they say clause assessment and so on need to be made in order to what they say avoid unnecessary operations, especially from the applicant side, because there should be some changes in the pricing and also the allocation mechanism. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Please.
I can remember from JPNIC. It's really, I think that this proposal has the good intention to deploy the IPv6. That's great. But at the same time, I have some sense of the ambiguity of this. For example, if the automatically delegated IPv6 was not really deployed in the two years, what happened there? That's ambiguity number one. Another thing is that automatically delegating the IPv6 may incur the cost. That would be acceptable or not. I have no idea how the committee would accept this. So in this reason, we oppose this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please.
Hi, Lee Howard from IPv4.global by Hilco Streambank. I agree exactly that I think the intent here is fantastic. IPv6 is where we all need to be. Everyone should deploy IPv6. I'm curious why this proposal would target new requests that are not transfer, but not transfer recipients who probably have exactly the same need for IPv6. And I think we're missing part. And I'm especially concerned about the fee implications of the additional costs that might be incurred for some members of the community.
So do we have any other comments? Any comments on the online? Anupamji? No comments on.
So I have a comment and I remove my chair hat. So I'm speaking on my behalf. I don't know if you've heard, there's the Czech Republic that has decided to go V6 only by 2032. And this is the kind of announce that will push people to go to V6. That's it for my comments.
I agree with your comment to the extent that Czech Republic has done it, because Czech Republic is a sovereign government, but APNIC is not.
Exactly.
Right? APNIC cannot go into any coercive means, right? You have to demonstrate a need for a resource. So in this case, the customer is not demonstrating any need for IPv6. But we are saying, because you are wanting IPv4, well, you get IPv6. And then after 2 years, then what? So, well, there are, I say that I agree that the incentivization is good. You know, we are trying to find ways and means. I would like to commend him for at least using a lot of time and energy in trying to find a way and means to incentivize IPv6. But like I said, this proposal yet is in a very rough form. So it needs a little more work.
Yeah, but and
Do we have any comment, like the author, like, do you have any comment? No? David?
There's no comment from me. Let the front please.
Okay, we have another. Please.
Yeah, this is Guo Wu, and I'm individual alone right now. It's not belong to any institution. Regarding for this policy, I have a couple points. The first point, promote the IPv6 is a good idea, but this proposal doesn't demonstrate how this proposal can really making the IPv6 promotion and really be implemented. You know, it gives them the address doesn't solve the problem of how the IPv6 to implement into the internet structure. So basically, I oppose this proposal.
Thank you. Aditya, do you have any other comment? No, I guess. Okay, thank you so much, Aditya. I will now make a consensus call. So you will be given opportunity. If you strongly oppose this proposal, please come in front of the mic and explain. If you haven't already explained, and if you support or strongly support, please raise your hand, or if you're neutral. Okay, first, I will go with if you strongly. And also, like, I want to say the confer link again, the confer.apnic.net. You can go over there and you can also go there and like make your, you can like, okay. If you strongly support this, if you strongly support this proposal, please put your hand up. Okay, if you support this proposal, please put your hand up. If you are neutral to this proposal, please put your hand up. Okay, we don't. Okay, one hand for the neutral. If you oppose this proposal, please put your hand up. If you strongly oppose this proposal, please put your hand up. So we already get one comment from 2 comments, and Chris already said. So I will discuss with my co-chairs and get back to you soon. Okay, thank you for waiting. As the community has failed to reach the consensus on this proposal, the chairs will send back to the mailing list and the author to consider whether it can be amended or should be abandoned, or you can like post it again on for the next OPM. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Aditya, and thank you, everyone. Over to you, Barton.
So yeah, thank you, David, for this proposal. And you had good comments within this session. So hopefully, if you want to carry on with this proposal, just take into account what was said today. And that's about it for this first session. I'd like to thank you all for joining, and I'll give you rendezvous for the next one at after lunch. Yeah, well, after lunch, after the nap, 2:30. Yeah, 2:30. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch.